Hi everybody, welcome back. In the previous video, I talked about monetary system and the structure of the Federal Reserve. In this video, I'm going to talk about the Federal Reserve policy tools and why they're important. So basically, we have more than these three policy tools that I put in the lecture notes, remember. But these are probably the main policy tools for the Federal Reserve to control the money and the interest rate. So we have the required reserve ratio, and required reserve ratio is basically nothing but the amount of money that the Federal Reserve is asking financial institutions and banks to keep at the Federal Reserve, and it's just for the security of their customers. So if there is any problem, bankruptcy with these commercial banks or financial institutions, the Federal Reserve can somehow help their customers out. So it's kind of like a safety net for the customers of commercial banks and financial institutions and credit unions. But of course, there is also a way that the Federal Reserve can control the supply of money by changing this required reserve ratio. Okay. Then we have the discount rate. I already explained about the discount rate in the previous video, so watch it if you don't remember. And then we have the open market operation, which is nothing but buying and selling government securities, which are Federal Reserve's assets to public. Okay, remember we talked about FOMC in the previous video. So that's the main thing that the FOMC basically can do, buying and selling government securities in the open market. The president of New York, Federal Reserve in New York, is in charge of running the open market operation. Remember that the government securities are Federal Reserve, as I mentioned, Federal Reserve's assets. So the Federal Reserve has the right to buy them, sell them anytime it wants. Okay. And when we're talking about the open market operation, there is no transaction happening between the Federal Reserve and the federal government. It's just something that the Federal Reserve does whenever the Fed wants to change the interest rate, the supply of money, and it's happening between the Federal Reserve and us, people, firms, businesses, okay? And again, another way that the Federal Reserve can control the money market is through the open market operation. So we have these three policy tools: required reserve ratio, discount rate, and open market operation. Okay, now let's see how they work. To understand basically the application of the Federal Reserve policy tools, we have to talk about money market. So remember, we talked about so far the perfect competition market in chapter 3. We talked about labor market in chapter 9. We talked about the whole economy in chapter 12, in aggregate demand, aggregate supply kind of model we had. And now we're talking about another market, money market. So just like any other market, we should look into the demand and supply, right? And we're going to talk about money demand first, okay? And then we'll talk about money supply. So money demand or demand for money is coming from anybody who wants to hold money, individuals, firms, right? And just like any other demand, money demand shows the relationship between price and quantity demanded of money. The price we have here is nothing but the interest rate, okay? So the demand for money shows the relationship between the interest rate and the quantity of money that people want to hold. We call it quantity of money demanded, okay? And just like chapter 3, we have a downward slope money demand, or MD, because there is an inverse relationship between our interest rate and the quantity of money. So remember that this interest rate that we're talking about here is nothing but the opportunity cost of money. If you don't remember what we mean by opportunity cost, review chapter 1. So interest rate here is nothing but the opportunity cost of holding money. And the demand for money shows the relationship between this interest rate and how much money people are going to hold. Okay. And remember, when we say interest rate here, we're talking about the nominal interest rate. So, what's the difference between nominal interest rate and real interest rate? When we say nominal interest rate, it means that we have inflation inside nominal interest rate. Remember, we talked about nominal GDP, real GDP. It's kind of similar to that. In real GDP, we were excluding the inflation rate. Same thing here. Real interest rate doesn't have any inflation. Nominal GDP had inflation rate and allowed the prices to change. Same thing here. In nominal interest rate, we do have inflation. Okay. So let's say you open a saving account. Okay. And the bank tells you that the interest rate on the saving account is, let's say, 3%. This 3% is the nominal interest rate. It doesn't tell you what exactly you are getting from putting your money in this saving account, because this 3% is higher than the interest rate that you are actually going to get at the end of the day. If you consider the inflation rate, the interest that you're going to get from the money that you're putting aside in the saving account will be smaller. So let's say the interest rate is 2%. The real interest rate, what you actually going to get from your saving account, is just 1%. So nominal interest rate is typically higher than real interest rate. Don't forget that. If it could be the same, if it could be equal, it could be lower. For instance, if we have deflation, okay, if they're equal, if the inflation rate is 0. So these are like kind of extreme cases we have, but typically nominal interest rate is greater than real interest rate. So as I was saying, that for money demand shows the relationship between this nominal interest rate and the amount of money that people want to hold, the quantity of money demanded. There's an inverse relationship between these two. That's why we have a downward slope money demand. And the reasons that we have this kind of shape is that, remember that the interest rate is the opportunity cost. If the nominal interest rate increases, it means that it's expensive for you to hold money, to demand money. So when interest rate is higher, you are not going to actually hold that much money, because if you open a saving account, you are going to get more money out of it. If you buy stock and bonds, you are going to make more money. So when interest rate is high, you have less incentives to hold your money, let's say under your pillow or in your checking account. You're going to use that money because you can make more out of it if you make an investment, because interest rate is high. If interest rate, however, decreases, your demand for money, the amount of money you're going to hold, your quantity demanded for money will increase. Now, interest rate is low, so you really don't want to have a saving account. You're not going to buy more stocks. You don't have that much incentives, right? So you're going to hold more money. That's why we have this kind of shape and this opposite relationship between nominal interest rate and quantity of money. Just like chapter 3 and chapter 12, if the interest rate changes, nominal interest rate changes, there's no shift in money demand. There are other factors that can shift your money demand, like the price of goods and services that you buy, the real GDP, which is your total income for a country, and the type of basically means of payments that you have, or financial technology. So if money demand increases, we have a rightward shift in money demand. If money demand decreases, we have a leftward shift in money demand. Let me explain how the price level, real GDP, and financial technology can shift the money demand, and then in the next video I will talk more about money supply. Let's start with the the price level. So remember that the price level is different from price. Price level is about the price of all the goods and services that we buy, we consume. Price is just price for one product, okay? If price level increases, it means that everything is becoming more expensive for you. It means that the purchasing power of your money is going down, right? So to buy the same amount of goods and services, you need to have more money. So if price level increases, if everything becomes more expensive, your demand for money will increase. If the price level goes down, your demand for money will go down. You don't need to keep as much money as you used to because everything is less expensive, okay? Real GDP. Real GDP is your total income, is the total income of a nation. So if real GDP increases, it means that people want to buy more goods and services, right? Because they have more money to spend, so their demand for money will increase. If right now, if recession is happening, if the real GDP is dropping, it means that the people's income, nation's income is dropping, so their demand for money will go down. We have a leftward shift. Financial technology basically is nothing but how basically you are making your purchases. Are you using your debit card, your credit card, your checks, e-checks, your PayPal? How you are using your money when you want to buy something, okay? If you are using PayPal, which is linked to your checking account, if you are using your checkbooks, if you are using your debit cards, you probably need to keep cash in your checking account, so your demand for money will increase. If, however, you are using mainly your credit cards, or electronic payments that basically are linked to your credit line, then your demand for money actually is going to drop. So financial technology is nothing but the type of payment or the means of payment that you typically use. Okay, so that was about money market. A little bit about the Federal Reserve policy tools that we will again explain more about them in the next video, and also the demand for money. In the next video, I will talk about the money supply.